Hey, I'm Aria Diana. Welcome to another episode of our book club video series, Composting, Competition, and Moving Toward Compersion, in which my metamour and fellow relationship coach Salina and I explore Marie Thouin's book, What is Compersion? In this episode, we're discussing Chapter 2, titled Positive Empathy. Marie's research found the two key components of compersion are positive empathy and gratitude. This chapter focuses on the former, and empathy is defined as feeling into, which is the German definition, or the strong feeling connection with another, or I feel what you feel, or I can imagine what you feel. Marie's take on positive empathy is that compersion is a shared positive experience. So Salina and I will chat about all of this and more. Let's go.
Well, so grateful to be in our book club this morning together. And I love that we get to start with some somatic and mindful practice. And I think you and I have both been playing with how we can lean on some of these tools. They can help us in this realm of polyamory, which isn't something I've done before. I mean, I use mindfulness and somatic tools all the time to ground me and center me and help like self-regulate, but I haven't created particular mindfulness somatic practices in relationship to polyamory. And so I've been playing with that a little bit. So I've been playing with one about positive empathy, which we're going to explore today. So are you down to experiment?
Yes, always. I love that. Let's do
Okay,
it.
lovely. So just getting in your cozy seat, maybe softening the eyes. Letting the chair and the seat and the earth underneath you just support. Welcoming some breath. Just like you're opening a window to a stuffy room and letting some summer breeze move through. Imagine you're just creating some space with the breath. Bringing to mind an image of our polycule. And you can extend that as wide or as small as you'd like, but here in the center, I'd like to place you, Aria, Justin, myself, Sky, Bex, kind of these bigger players. Just imagining us, maybe we're sitting in a circle. And you might imagine each one of our hearts beating, feeling. And we'll start here with ourselves, imagining that each of us is sitting here in a circle and hanging out with your own heart for a moment. Imagine yourself doing one of your most favorite, special, life-giving activities that actually doesn't have anything to do with anyone else in this circle. So it's just about your joy. Just hang out for a few moments here, imagining your joy. You might see the expression on your face when you're doing this thing. You might feel the laughter, the warmth, the pleasure in your body when you're engaging in this thing. And maybe you feel your own agency and power in your own life, your relationship to yourself outside of anybody else in this circle. Just breathe that in for a moment. The joy you feel of being in relationship to yourself. And you might imagine now that everybody in this polycule is receiving the ripples of your own joy. So maybe it's this energy or this glitter or this sparkle, this actual personal joy is now maybe caressing the shoulders or the cheeks of everybody else in our polycule. That my joy is their joy. And there might even be some envy or some jealousy or some feelings of exclusion that emerge from anyone else in the polycule of like, oh, I wish I was with you, or that looks fun, or I want to do that. And see if you can imagine that actually there's love or compassion embedded in this joy that caresses or holds hands with any part of exclusion. And that gets to be here too. That this joy is actually a container for any insecurity or feelings of not belonging to sit into. Just hanging out here for another moment, just noticing any lingering energy that you being engaged in something you love and something that gives you life actually gives all of us life. My joy is your joy, and your joy is my joy. Just another breath here. Mm.
Lovely. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for playing with me.
I
I'm
love that
curious
meditation.
if something, did you have a visualization of like what you were doing that brought you joy?
Yeah, it was interesting. It kept shifting actually, which was curious. There was like a moment when I was like hiking by myself through the redwoods, and then I was like on a canoe paddling, and then I was at my computer writing, which is like such a solo exercise. And it was interesting. There was a moment when I was like on the river, and then I was like, oh, but we could all be on the river, like floating together. Yeah.
That's cute. I love
Yeah. What
that.
about you? Was there something that came to mind for you?
I was just imagining myself in my like prayerful, witchy, like spiritual connection moment, which often, I love doing with my like fellow witch friends, but also love just doing by myself. That often is like a place I feel most empowered and feel
Mm,
most connected.
yeah.
And something that's been coming up a lot for me in relationship to, polyamory period lately is just this feeling of like being in like really honoring my life and what brings me joy. There's a beautiful part of like getting to be related to multiple people here and in relationship with multiple people here. I think that polyamory brings, it's like the joy of getting to be connected with many, many others, especially in a way that monogamy doesn't allow. But then also really anchoring in like partners may come and go, but this is like fundamentally my journey. And
Mm.
when I anchor in that, it both makes me feel less like rigidly attached and like scared. I'm gonna lose someone. Things are gonna
Mhm.
change. But also it helps me, I think, anchor in this feeling of like wanting to honor that for everybody here, of like everybody here has their own life and agency and power. And I really felt that in this chapter come through for me. So thanks for
Mm.
playing in that theme.
Yeah, thank you for experimenting. I love that. It's like you've done it for a million years. Not your first poly meditation, but maybe.
Well, let's dive in a little bit more. So, when Marie did her research, she talks about there's I think about it as like different ways towards embodying compersion. And this is like my interpretation of it. There's like emotional, cognitive, attitudinal, and behavioral. And when I first started working with Marie on our first phone call, I told her, I was like, so I'm not there yet. And I was like, at the very least, I was like, I want to not be a bitch when Justin's dating other people. I'm like, at the very least, I'm like, if I could just do that, if I can just like keep my shit together and not be a bitch, that's like my first go-to. But then I'd like to really start showing compersive behaviors and compersive attitudes. And Marie was like, oh, she's
Let
like,
me tell you about my research.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I was pleased with that. I was like, oh, okay. And I think about it like that is like, there's compersive feelings. There's a way cognitively and like logically, I think sometimes I can anchor and like, especially for me as like compersion is this practice of liberation. Like for me cognitively, that really helps me align. Emotionally, sometimes I feel that yummy feeling of compersion. And then sometimes I think about the behavioral and the attitudinal, like these are like practices for me. I'm trying to practice showing compersive behaviors and I'm trying to practice having compersive attitudes. So I'm curious if any of these feel really alive for you right now, or if there's any of these that you feel, yeah, you have some insight around.
I love that. Yeah, it's cool that you were like aware of the different ways it shows up. And I think that's helpful to know. It's not just like, I feel so happy all the time. And I think that can feel really daunting as a goal. Like I'm just supposed to be happy that my partner's having
Oh,
these experiences with someone else. But I think when we can break it down into these kind of like smaller, more attainable steps, like, okay, I'm going to hold this attitude of compersion, even if I don't feel it, I
yes.
think is such a good baby step into like moving away from jealousy and moving towards compersion. And I think like really being clear on my vision and values of the sacred autonomy that we talked about, of trusting that everyone is a whole individual with their own
Mm.
desires, and yeah, moving away from those enmeshed codependent tendencies of feeling like we have to do everything together, I think has been really helpful. And I think for like the cognitive part, really trying to like anchor into the benefits has been really helpful, and moving away from focusing on comparison, like not centering like what somebody else in the polycule has that I don't have, but really just like looking for the silver lining
Mm.
of being related. I think the emotional aspect of it shows up a lot more now after a long time of practicing the cognitive attitudinal things. And the emotional, yeah, is more like feeling like there's a rich web of support around me and my marriage. And really, yeah, the gratitude practice helps make that possible. And I was, as I was thinking about like behavioral compersion, I think the story that stands out the most to me was maybe 2 or 3 summers ago. My nesting partner was going to DJ like a sex party festival, and he was getting ready to go and wasn't totally prepared to like be in the forest for 3 nights or something. So I made him a pasta salad and I cooked him some food, and I was like, I want to nourish your journey, and like, yes, you may go have some new sexy experiences with other people, and maybe I have feelings about that, but I'm going to really try to like show up in a practical behavioral support way, in a way that like I know that you're going to at least have a couple meals to like keep you resourced as you go through this experience. And that was a funny moment, just to be like, here's your lunch, like go have fun at the play party.
Aw,
Yeah.
that's so cute. I love that.
So Bay Area.
Very, very. Absolutely. Little lunch
Mm,
pail.
yeah, totally.
Have fun at your
Lo-
sex party.
Love you, honey. Yeah.
Wow. Love
Yeah.
that. I love that so much because I think like this is something that's coming up for me. And what I wanted to also include in my meditation was like, we can have compersion right next to feelings of insecurity. And I think this is like what helped me when I think about like the behaviors is like I could still be feeling both left out, both like doing some active comparing, and also still make my sweetie lunch, you know? And I think that helps is like all these things still can like be at play. And I'm curious like how it felt for you when you were making the lunch.
I remember feeling like, okay, this is like a tangible thing that I can do to show my love, support him as he's, wanting to pursue more DJ local gigs and like really trying to focus on like, okay, if this brings him joy, this is going to bring me joy. And like I can't like control the whole situation, but I can send him with this gift that reminds him that I'm with him even though I can't be there.
Hmm. I love this. I almost want to at some point like have a little like book of like the attitudinal and the behavioral compersion practices.
Mm, I
You
love
know,
that.
yeah, just like li little
Here's
things
some
to
little
do.
tips you can borrow. Yeah.
Totally. And
Hmm.
there's been some times, especially in the last 6 months, when I've been working my ass off, and I've been in this like era of not getting a lot of my needs met with Justin, just because it's like we've both been, I've been traveling so much for work, blah, 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 blah. And it's harder for me when I'm like, like my needs aren't being met. And so there's been plenty of times when he's gone on dates and I've like for me the practices is like can I be like the behavior that I show is just texting him like I hope you have a great date. And those things really mean something to him. Justin does that really easily with me a lot, so I receive a lot of that. But even like a few of those things or occasionally I've been like here, let me help you pack the cooler or like yeah, I think it's like that kind of collaborative, caring, nourishment energy. I really
Yeah.
appreciate.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to share your approach to compersion cash? I feel like that's such a tangible, sweet, like Selena May original thing that when I heard about it, I was just like, I love that.
Aw. Well, I think again, I think for me because my compersion path is like newer and I really feel like I'm working through like decolonizing some of my old paradigms around like threat. When I have feelings of compersion, I part of the practice is like act on it, like now, like don't wait for it to pass, like express it. And so I think there was one time where Justin and I had just gone to Esalen, and I think he was going on a date with you the next day, and I was like, "Here's $100, like take her out to dinner. Like beautiful women deserve to be like taken out."
Love that so much.
Yeah, that was one moment, and then I think another moment, it was, and I think for me, Marie had suggested this like invitation of the love bubble, and I think that's a little bit where I was going today in our meditation with this kind of like thinking about the polycules ecosystem. And she's like, can you imagine Aria and Justin and yourself like all in this love bubble, which really resonates with just like how I feel often, like in kind of like a loving energy. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. And you were feeling sick, and it's like such a way of expressing myself is like gifts and care and care. Like I love to take care of people, and also when I'm sick, I want to fucking cook. I was like, will somebody bring me soup? So, anyways, I was just having this moment too of just feeling a lot of your generosity. I think you had just invited me to be a part of the polycule visibility, meet my polycule event. And you had been inviting Justin and I to multiple things. And I was just really feeling the generosity of the invitation of collaboration and care. And it felt really authentic to be like, here's some. Here's some compersion cash. Take care of yourself, and I'm thinking of you, and let me like wrap you in some of my care.
Yeah, it was so sweet to be like, oh my God, Salina just sent me like a meal gift card to like, I'm like, amazing. I'm gonna order some hot and spicy soup. Like, so cute. So sweet. I love that so much. Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah, I see the behaviors. And I know you're working on all the other pieces and yeah, it means so much. It's so sweet.
Oh, you're cute. Glad you could receive that.
Yeah. The best.
So, yeah, let's keep going here because I think this kind of ties into what we were just saying. I thought this was such a juicy question here. So, Marie talks about this self-expansion theory, which we're kind of talking about, right? How do we start to expand our awareness of not just like individual, which often is so tied with white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, so individually minded, to like a more collective, human, interconnected place, which I love, like which so deeply resonates, I think, with both of how you and I operate towards the world. And so the self-expansion theory, it means that as people get closer emotionally, they begin to perceive the other as part of the self. And this might explain how someone might experience compersion from a relationship that doesn't even include them, and how we might dissolve this illusion of separateness by widening the circle of care, and helps us move away from this zero-sum game of the more for you means less for me. Oof, that's a hard one, right? It's so contrary to our like capitalist mainstream values that I think, and also this sometimes very real experience that I know I've had of scarcity of resource. And when people are hoarding resources, and we're not in a collaborative mindset, it can feel really vulnerable to like move towards a more, it's like requires a lot of trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in thinking about our metamour relationship, as we get closer, spending hours vulnerably real talking, sharing these tender places, I'm curious, like, how are you beginning to perceive me less as separate and more of a part of you? Like, how would you
Mm.
see some of our interconnectedness? You could think about that again with our polycule, with our relationship, with Justin, you and me.
Yeah, I love that question. I think the more I get to know you as an individual, whole, beautiful human and hear more about your trauma history and your needs and your desires, and it's like the more I want to help you get those needs met. And it's like when it was like originally when I was dating Justin, it was like this like theoretical, like, yeah, there's a wife in Grass Valley and who knows who she is or what she needs. And I think the more time we've spent developing our metamour relationship and having these conversations and collaborating, I can more clearly imagine how you would respond to situations. I can bring more tenderness to places where maybe in the past I would move fast and just think about what I want with Justin. And now it can be like, okay, let's slow down. Like, how would Salina feel about this if suddenly I'm in Seattle on, passing through town when he's also there and you were supposed to be there on a trip that got canceled? And I'm like, that might feel sensitive. Maybe I don't push for that date with him today and just, trust that we'll meet up when we were originally planning to. And I think in a voice note to me recently, you had shared some of the conditions that help it easier for you to feel compersion, which are advance notice of upcoming dates, time and space to process what's coming towards you, especially when there is like a lot of spaciousness and travel and not a lot of time and connection for you and Justin to be together to get those needs met. And you didn't explicitly say this, but kind of reading between the lines, I heard you say like feeling prioritized helps create the condition for compersion, and knowing these things helps me better plan, better check in with Justin, just being like, hey, have you and Salina had quality time? And encourage him to more proactively communicate and plan with you, knowing that you and I are both total planners and he's kind of more like, yeah, we'll figure it out. And um, yeah, so I think just like having a better understanding of you as a human helps me be more compassionate and sensitive and go slower and more considerate, I think.
Hmm. I appreciate that. Thanks for caring about me and wanting to get to
Yeah.
know me and wanting to get to know like what works and what, yeah, helps build more sustainable systems. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's like, it's interesting to me to think about like this more collectivism, which I've been thinking a lot lately, how sustainability, and we might think about that in like an ecosystem as well, which is just like capitalism is so like hard and brutal and short-term thinking,
Yeah.
and what's a more collective, decolonized, sustainable, long-term thinking, long-term health in the ecosystem. And I think that's something you do really beautifully. And I think like especially after having just gone through a breakup where my metamour was refusing to meet me, and that to me signified not, I mean, so many things, but really there was no, that wasn't a sustainable system. And how much personally reflecting, like I got caught up in kind of this fantasy of the relationship, which I think happens a lot with new relationship energy.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
There's,
Just focus on the fun, sparkly bits and not like the
yeah,
practical day-to-day things, maybe, if it's something, yeah, where there's a lot of spaciousness between the connections. And yeah.
totally. The
Hmm.
sparkly parts, but then also the future thinking of like, which I think happens a lot in monogamous relation connections, which is just like not just, and then, we move in and then we get married and then it's happily ever after. But I think about that new relationship energy for me did some of that too. And ultimately, it's like the thing kind of fell on its head. And I've been comparing that to this very different experience I'm having with you and Justin, where I think both of you are operating from just a very different mindset. It's slower, but also I feel like it's actually healthier.
Hmm. Yeah, I like thinking about like long time thinking, right? I feel like so much of our culture is like the 15-second Instagram thing and the viral content. And it's like fast paced, like
Yes,
a little disembodied. And it's like, okay, let's like slow down and feel our feelings and think about like what are we actually trying to create here and how to do it in a sustainable way that everyone feels taken care of. And we know that we're interconnected, right? It's like my relationship with Justin doesn't exist outside of his marriage with you. And thinking about you as an integral part of the health of it, I think is such a non-mononormative way of thinking and requires a lot of practice and learning. And I've definitely made all of those mistakes in the past where it's like not prioritizing the metamour relationship and not building that trust. And it definitely makes things harder for everyone, I think.
totally. Yeah, I am excited by it. And it feels new and different again, like a paradigm shift. I think of how, I mean, again, like decolonizing some of that threat feeling, and also a marriage often can feel like it's just us. And it's different, I imagine, if you have a family and there's children, you still might feel like there's us in a little pod, but it's really different to be thinking about the collective. I shared with you earlier in a voice note that I had this experience yesterday, which was so sweet to me. I was like, it happened like a few times when Justin and I were like hanging out on our deck. I was like, I wish Aria was here. And I was like, that's a cute feeling. And I
Oh,
almost texted you a few times. I was like, what are you doing?
so cute.
Like, and I was like, oh, this is a cute feeling for me to be with. And also to think about, I've been thinking about the three of us hanging out together and exploring like what friendship and benefit could be there. And I think for me, I'm having this shift in mindset of like Justin, I mean, maybe Justin and I both manifested you into our lives. I don't know. Maybe it was just him. I don't know who magnetized, but I was like, you've been such a gift for so many reasons, and I feel grateful to him. And I think you're a great example for me of like, wow, there's growth, there's opportunity, there's connection, there's emotional connectivity, there's like friendship, there's all of these gifts that came through this like romantic connection. And it helps, gives me data to start shifting this old belief of like, there's less. Because actually, I can really sit in this experience now of like, wow, there's so much more.
Hmm.
And I can
So
see
sweet.
it. Yeah.
Hmm. I love that. How cool. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there is so much benefit, and I think you guys are too, like, yeah, I feel like every conversation with both of you is just like so interesting and fascinating, and I'm learning and healing and growing through connection with both of you. And yeah, I feel like there's not very many people that I can have this conversation with, and that's really exciting to me.
Hmm. I love that. Yeah, so your husband Sky gave me a tarot reading this weekend, which I felt like another example of that, which was so cool to see him and his gift and power. And, I've only met him a few times, and every time I am with him, I'm like, whoa, like he's so cool. And it was just another layer of feeling like gifted by this relationship and community. And it was sweet for me.
I love that. Yeah, it's cool to like really think about like the collective of the polycule. And I love that meditation so much of just being like, okay, we are all in this like intricate, delicate circle. The energy we bring to it ripples out and affects people. And like, how can we be intentional and take care of each other and know that it's more than just the two-person closed nuclear family, and like there's more
Mm.
spaciousness for care and support and learning and growth. And that's one of my favorite parts about polyamory is just like what happens when we like open up to new creative possibilities and broaden the ecosystem and think about everybody's needs instead of being so hyper individualistic.
Yes. So I'm curious because Sky is getting ready to go on a trip to Berlin with Bex, which is like a new experience for you. And I wonder how you are, if you're open to sharing it in as much as you'd like, but how you're making sense of that, well, how you're practicing compersion in this and where it feels hard or tender and where it feels a little more easeful.
Yeah, in this moment, it feels pretty easeful. I think mostly because my mind has been distracted with a lot of other summer travel and events. And I'm just grateful that he gets to go have this cool experience with her. And she knows a nightclub owner there, and he'll get to go have like VIP treatment at this cool Berlin club where he can go listen to techno, which they both love. And in the past, I've tried to keep up with him and go to all the nightclubs and be like, okay, this is not really my scene, but I'm gonna like put on the black leather and show up and like try to like support you in this thing that you love.
I
And
bet you look
it's
very hot in the black leather, by the way. I'm like, I want to see that. Just for
I'll
funsies,
send
just for funsies.
totally. I'll send you some cute pics from the club. But yeah, I think just like recognizing that like maybe that can be like their thing and like that's okay and I don't have to be included in every experience. And I think yeah, by like learning to recognize where I can step back to allow them to like step in together and have this cool experience that they're both gonna love, that maybe I would get tired or be like, okay, it's 2 o'clock. Can we go home now? And he wants to be there till sunrise. So I think it's been this practice of just like accepting and allowing that not every experience is for me. And just because they have this big fun trip together doesn't take anything away from me. And in this moment, I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm so proud of you and touched by this. I like think what a big gift to give your partner, which makes me think we'll talk in a moment about these themes. But I see for me what comes up in that is, my joy is your joy. It's like it's a romantic gift, like what a gift you want your partner to be happy and thriving, even if you're not a part of it. I see it as this like romantic gesture, even though it's not you two necessarily experiencing the romantic part. And I also, if you're open, because in this moment I see you being very empowered and standing really clearly in your compersion for this. And when I thought about doing this myself, I'm like, oh, I got some work to do still. And I was wondering, like, if grief came up at all, or like there's this acceptance, like the relationship changed, like your relationship with Sky changed. Like maybe 5 years ago, you wouldn't have seen like this is a part of your future, But there's like this, there's something here. And I was just curious if you're open to sharing like what the compersion is next to, if there are any other feelings.
Think about that for a minute. Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that comes up is just the sacrifice I think there was a time when all of us were thinking about going to Berlin together. Like Bex is going to be there already for work. And originally, like Olivia and Ore, Sky's other partner, they were also going to be in Berlin at the same time. So there was this moment where it was like, ooh, is like Polycule does Berlin? Like, that sounds fun. And then I realized that like the timing didn't work out. Like I'm getting ready to launch my next group. I really want to be here working. And I think it was kind of like anchoring into like what is my priority in this moment, and like sure, it sounds great to like go have a fun nightclub weekend in Berlin with polycule friends, and also I kind of like excluded myself from that experience because I was like, this actually isn't my priority in this moment. And there's a part of me that's like, oh, it would be really fun to be there. And like there's, yeah, for sure, like a little bit of sadness, like, oh, I wish there was time for us all to have this shared experience. And also like I chose not to go. Like I was invited. It's this practice of being like, is the feeling of exclusion going to be worth, I don't know, it's like balancing like the feeling of exclusion and like the sadness that comes up about like wanting to have this, but also having other priorities. And so there, yeah, there is some other emotions, feelings there. And I think as much as possible, I'm just trying to like anchor into the vision and values of like the future, which is building my business and having more spaciousness in the future for me and Sky to get to take trips that like are deeply aligned with like what he and I both want. And for this one, it was kind of like, I think it's for you too.
Wow. Hearing that like deep listening, also being willing to kind of look at your any FOMO that might arise. Because sometimes I feel that way where it's like, is this FOMO or do I really want to do the thing?
Yes, that's a great way to say it. Be like, is this just,
Yeah.
yeah, fear of missing something that's maybe actually not for me?
And that's like, you've said that a few times in this conversation, like, that's not for me. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's like such a great invitation of just like, what's for me?
Yeah.
And I feel like I've done that a few times when Justin would plan these like boys trips with he has like a core group of male friends and they do a lot of hiking, outdoor adventures, which I love doing. So I was like, I want to go. And I
Totally. This
think I
could
went
be for me.
exactly. And so I
Yeah.
think I did like three of them before I was like, okay.
Where's my outdoor adventure? Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, actually, like, this is not for me. Like, you guys are doing your own thing. It actually is beautiful. Like, maybe there's a time where some of the partners come and it's like a group thing, but I actually don't want to be like the only girl on your boys' like, like, it's actually not the thing. But that fear of missing out or the fear of being excluded, that played a role for me for a while. I think like just something I'm glad we're doing this because I think for me, I have no interest in like spiritually bypassing or invalidating everything. And for me, like I said, compersion is like right next to any other parts. And I almost imagine it like a salve or like a honey or like something like sweet and soft that just kind of like wraps around because especially as like a child, like one of 10 children, I have a very lived experience of like feeling excluded and feeling like I don't belong, like there's not room for me, like sometimes having to fight for a place. Yeah, I just want to like really wrap that feeling of like exclusion or feeling left out. For me, compersion is like part of the medicine. Maybe you get to like feed that. So I'm just playing with that. I appreciate you naming what comes up.
I love that. Compersion is a gentle tonic
I
to
like
like
those.
ease some of the sticky, painful bits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of these themes that we touched on already that emerged in her research around positive empathy. And I think there's 4 or 5 of them. Here we go. So I named this already. Their joy is my joy. I love that. Sounds a little sexy to me. Compersion is the second one. Compersion is an expression of romance. Like I can give my partner what you really want. And it's like a romantic gesture to fulfill your other desires with other people. And that's just, moving away from this romantic paradigm that centers jealousy and possession, shifting into like this could actually be a romantic expression to really support you in what deeply serves you and pleases you. I love this third one, shifting from what serves me to what serves us, like thinking about our partnership as like we're on the same team. How do we think about both of our needs? Like that there's and also I think that could extend to the polycule, the well-being of the whole. The fourth one, positive relational feedback loop. So, and this is a little bit what I was talking about in the meditation. It's like when you are getting pleased, I can actually receive some of those benefits. So when someone in the polycule in the partnership is receiving joy, we can actually feel like, oh, this is benefiting our relationship. It's benefiting our polycule. It's benefiting me. Aria, benefit for me. Just brought
Oh,
Aria into my life. And then erotic compersion. This is a little sexy too. Like this yummy feeling of envisioning or experiencing our partners being in connection with other partners, and that imagining feeling them getting sexually pleased actually turns us on. It's like a little kinky. Yeah. So out of all of these, and I imagine maybe you've had relationship to some of these at different times, just like maybe is one of these more on your mind right now? Yeah. The one you're
yeah.
practicing more.
All of this, like the more empowered we each are, the better. And I think I've experienced versions of all five of these at different moments. I think, thinking about this upcoming trip this guy's doing with Bex, like I think that one feels like number two, like really like being willing to sacrifice my own comfort for the sake of their pleasure and just being like, it's for you. It's what you both really want. And it's not exactly what I want. So let me take a step back. And I think in general, the one that like resonates most values aligned is the third one, like moving away from what serves me to what serves us. And I think it really requires that we unlearn this like dominant American rugged individualism culture and really recognize our interconnectedness, and it requires communication skills and nervous system regulation and practice to create like win-win-win situations. But I
Mm.
think that's really what I'm interested in. And I heard you say, I think in our first episode of this book club, like that doing this project together creates a sense of accountability between us to hold us to higher standards of care for the whole polycule. And I love that so much. And I feel like you are sincerely trying to support my relationship with your husband, even when it's hard for you, which is so powerful to like be on the receiving end of that and see your growth and see you really trying to bring forth more compersion. And I have shared with you that I have a tender spot when it comes to relating to couples in a hierarchical framework after going through that pretty traumatic breakup a couple years ago where my needs were clearly so secondary. And I think you've been so caring and attentive to that wound. And you said something to me in a voice note the other day about like really wanting for you to spend the whole weekend with Justin after he's been away for a month on his big mountain biking trip with his mistress, the mountain bike. But then so quickly also acknowledging like I also haven't seen him for 6 weeks and really creating space for him to come connect with me, even when I think what you really wanted was for you guys to have the whole weekend together. And I really felt like you were taking accountability for like recognizing my needs. And even though you two are in a hierarchical structure, I really felt like you were like recognizing my humanity and creating space for me. And like that meant so much. And I really like see you working to create that positive feedback loop and felt your genuine like goodwill and desire to include me.
Aw. Well, yay. I'm so glad you felt that. That makes me
Yeah.
feel happy.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm grateful for that. It's hard for myself when I've experienced scarcity, especially being an educator in like school systems that are just like living in poverty.
Yeah.
So it's like it's this massive paradigm shift to start to invite myself to experience a more abundance mindset, especially like I said, I didn't see Justin for 4 weeks. I went through the breakup. I was like getting real lonely, like up here. It was definitely a practice to be like, I want Justin to be happy, and then starting to extend that to you of like, I want you to be happy, and I want I want to lean into this idea of like, if Justin and I don't spend one of those nights together, I'll still have enough and all possibly can be benefited and by like his time with you. And I think there's a piece where I'm still excited to explore how Justin might become a better partner to me through partnership with you,
Hmm.
which is like, something I'm like, I don't know what that looks like. Like, does it look like him scaling up? Does it look like him maybe having multiple mirrors of sometimes where it's like, I've been telling him the same thing for 12 years and he's like, oh, Salina, but then maybe you'll be like, hey, like, look at this. And he might be like, oh, I'm hearing it differently. Or like, there's
Hmm.
lots of ways. I'm just trying to be open to like, and for me, the sacred autonomy piece is coming up really big for me in terms of thinking about like, Justin has a whole life outside of me. I want to allow him to live his life to the fullest outside of me. And if I'm thinking sustainable wise, like if I'm thinking we could really have a chance at like, partnership till we're in our 80s or 90s, like if I really am thinking about that, like what sustainability wise, like I want us to both thrive. I want us to live the life that we feel the fullest. So how do I really honor? And I love that. And that's when so all these things are like related, right? There's the like shifting of, okay, this is about the happiness of our relationship. And I can start to tap in of like, this feels like a gift I'm giving you, even though I know it's hard. It's hard for me right now, even though I'm feeling like, I just want you to be home, like holding my hand right now, or whatever it is. Like this is a gift I'm giving you. And he receives it that way of like, oh, you love me this much. You're honoring me. And that feels romantic to me. Like I think I shared with you one date that he went on with you and then he came back and I was like in a struggle moment and Marie's like, "Can you just like be in your love and light some candles and like have a nice dinner or something?" And I did that and I was like, "Oh wow, this is an interesting feeling of like he just had this romantic experience with you. He could come back, feel like fed and excited and him and I can still have a romantic experience. It's not like his romance was like he's like, I'm done being
Totally.
romantic."
Right. Romance for today is done. Yeah. We've used those. Yeah. Yeah, I love that like
Yeah.
idea of like anchoring into the abundance that's possible when we move away from scarcity and really, yeah, move away from the idea of like love as a pie where it's like, oh, Aria got a big slice of pie yesterday, so there must be no pie left for me and just be like, okay, how can we all be fed and nourished by this experience and trust
Mhm.
that there is plenty to go around if we're not like you said like hoarding resources or like coming at it from like white supremacy colonizer like this is my affection, I'm gonna take your husband, and it's like yeah, none of that.
Totally. It
Yeah.
requires such a deep listening, I feel, for like, I don't know, for me, there's like, especially sometimes because in that like fear state, I can be so blinded. I'm not present. I'm like in my past wounds and in my trauma
Of
and my
course.
future scary projection. There's something that feels really grounding of like, let me actually be present with what's real. Like, oh, Justin's nourished. He's like smiling. He's happy. He's here to connect with me. Like
Totally.
actually, and whether that's you or the mountain biking or he's hanging out with his brother or this man loves his solitude. There's a lot of alone time. It's like how do I actually be in this listening of like how do I actually be present too to receive those benefits? Because if I'm in my story or so much my fear, like I'm actually not even attuned to like some of those benefits that might be here and be nourished by them.
Yeah, I love that practice of like slowing down and listening and being like, okay, what does everybody need? How can we check in with each other and not make decisions from a place of fear and scarcity and projection stories and just be like, what is the truth and what do I want to move towards instead of like looking over the shoulder in fear.
Yes. So
Hmm.
we've shared so much. I feel like we could talk about this all day. Looking forward to more. And let's just have a little closing moment. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. So just coming back to that inward space, feeling the lingering energy of all of this conversation. And imagining again, we're sitting in our polycule. And just imagining that all of this energy and love and depth and tenderness and exploration and healing that we've cultivated today, just imagining that it's rippling out to everybody here. That it feels like possibility, feels like expansion, feels like healing. Beautiful. Yay.
Thank you so much.
Yay, so fun.
Thank you so much for tuning into this book club video series, Composting Competition and Moving Toward Compersion. Subscribe to my weekly newsletter at ariadiana.substack.com to receive emails when another episode of this book club video series drops, as well as more tips and advice for people practicing non-monogamy sent straight to your inbox every Tuesday.